for YouTube. All right.
YouTube, I didn't get the notification. And for Facebook, it got on, but it's not actually live.
What we got? Oh, let's fix this first. All right. Okay. YouTube's live.
YouTube is live? Okay. So don't have to do anything with YouTube.
DC.
Yeah, YouTube is 12. Hold on. Can you do the sound check on YouTube?
Check.
Yeah,
Okay. Shalak, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. We're about to get with everybody in just a moment. I'm about to end the Facebook and try it.
It says, okay, you're live now.
Facebook.
You're too loud.
You're live now.
All right. Okay. All right. So we're live, and that had everything to do with the devil.
Right.
Had nothing to do with what was going on, but everything with the devil trying to stop what the Most High wants to come out. But if the Most High deems it to come out, it's going to come out.
Right.
All right, so we're about to go into slavery, how it ended, how it so-called ended, and why we think that slavery today is abolished when it is not. Only thing it's done is just been hidden in plain sight.
That's right.
The what we like to go to is back in what started at the Civil War in the United States, which was the main cause of the slavery to be hidden, I would say. But we're gonna go back. Salaki, if you could, I don't think I gave you this one, but
Which one?
this one I'm about to go into. First of all, Lincoln. We like to think of Lincoln, the former President Lincoln, as the spearhead to end slavery, when that really wasn't his intent on ending slavery. He knew our worth. He knew what we meant to his nation, and he didn't want our condition to be stopped. Essentially, what he wanted was our I'm too water. What he wanted was just a nicer, kinder, gentler slavery. Because what I'm about to bring out is just to show you the events that led up to the Civil War and how it affected us. Salaki, I'm gonna send you a.
Yo, go ahead. That's too hard.
If you could, you start from there. Well, what we've learned in school growing up was the Emancipation Proclamation, and that's what essentially freed the slaves in the South. But it didn't really entail freedom for us, not for every slave, as I'm about to bring out. Slacker, if you could, can you start from there, sir?
Mm-hmm. The Emancipation Proclamation.
Okay.
The Emancipation Proclamation, or Proclamation 95, was a presidential proclamation, an executive order issued by United States President Abraham Lincoln on September 22nd, 1862, during the Civil War.
So what we learned right here was the proclamation was just an executive order. If anybody knows anything about American politics, the executive order, any executive order can be written and signed into immediate law, which states that the executive order gives the president certain powers to enact certain things that he deems necessary that might not pass, or it might take too long to pass and pass into going from a bill to a law. So what the president has powers to do is they have a power to mandate something that they see fit that wouldn't wouldn't take so long to vet and proclaim and everything like that. So during the Civil War, basically, he stated that the slaves were to be freed, and we're going to read on. It doesn't say immediately. He said he wrote the war. The war officially started in 1860. He didn't write this proclamation to damn near the end of the year, 1860, 2 years later.
Right.
So everybody knew once he got elected, and we're going to read that in a little later on. Once he got elected, that signaled to the South that he was going to do what he had been chiming on doing the whole time he was running for president. Right. And that was to so-called free the slaves. And the South seemed, that was basically the South's livelihood. They couldn't, in their mind, they couldn't function without slaves. So 2 years later, he had wrote this proclamation stating that all slaves will be freed. But like I said, the war started in 1860. He didn't declare this until 1862, damn near 2 years later. Even with that, it goes on to show you when exactly this proclamation was to take place.
Right.
Salakia. Can you pick up where you left off?
The proclamation read that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863.
So hold on, go back up to read when did he come out and say it?
That on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863.
1863. So January 1st, 1863. Go ahead.
All persons held as slaves within any states or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be thenceforth and forever free.
All right. So basically what he's saying right now is on September 22nd, September 22nd, 1862, he put out a decree to the land saying that all slaves shall be free January 1st, 1863.
Right.
Not right now, not immediately. He gave these other devils some time to come to grips with their reality and say, well, we're gonna give you some time to make other arrangements and free your slaves. That's what he said. He didn't. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't right then and there. Basically, he said, "I'm gonna give you a few months to get your stuff together." Read from January 1st.
God. That on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be thenceforth and forever free. So
he's making a distinction between the peoples that were in certain states, and those certain states were the states that rebelled or tried to secede from the Union. We're going to read a little later on where it shows you that he allowed other states to continually hold slaves past the time of this proclamation.
Right.
And that just goes to show you, if you on the devil, if you on my side, I'll look out for you. Even the people who were against him, he still gave them a time frame where they can so-called get themselves together. But other states that had slaves, it wasn't just the North, the so-called North, but there were some border states that was around those states that seceded. They had slaves, but they were for the Union. And since they were for the Union, the president, Lincoln, allowed them to continue to have slaves at that time.
Right.
So this was part of the reason why the South seceded, was because he wanted this. This was his intention. He talked about it during debates and all that leading up to the election. He wanted to secede. It was no secret. He didn't want to. He wanted to free the slaves. There was no secret. It was no secret at how he felt about the slaves. It was no secret. Slack, if you could get me the one on Abraham Lincoln, what Abraham Lincoln thought about slavery. I'm about to show you exactly how he thought about the so-called African slaves that were freed during this time, and including the freed peoples that either escaped slavery to join the Union to fight for their freedom, how he felt about those people, and how he felt about the slaves at that time. Let me know when you got it.
God.
All right, go ahead.
Number one, Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist.
So it says the first thing in this article, it shows that Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist. Now, why do we think that Lincoln wanted to do away with slavery? An abolitionist is a staunch. It's gonna go into it, but abolitionists, they're very staunch in their stance on how they feel about slavery. And the first thing it's saying was Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist. So continue reading.
God. Abraham Lincoln did believe that slavery was morally wrong, but there was one big problem. It was sanctioned by the highest law in the land, the Constitution.
So it says it was sanctioned by the highest law of the land. The highest law of the land, if anybody know how, the devil feels about his Constitution, you cannot trample on his rights. One of the first flags to the Union was "Don't tread on me," basically saying, "Do not tread on my rights. I know this is one of their favorite sayings. I know my rights. I know how you can treat me. I know how you can't treat me." And basically, most of that stuff is coming from the Constitution.
Right.
Most of the laws right now stems from the DNA, if you will, of the U.S., the United States. Right. And it's saying that even though it was morally wrong, it was sanctioned by the U.S. It's in his DNA. It's in his blood. So when people go try and come up against slavery, the way they treat Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans in the U.S., but then try and uphold the Constitution, that's what they're supposed to do. Why? Because the Constitution makes provisions for slavery. That's what it wants. Keep reading.
God. Abraham Lincoln did believe that slavery was morally wrong, but there was one big problem. It was sanctioned by the highest law in the land, the Constitution. The nation's founding fathers, who also struggled with how to address slavery, did not explicitly write the word "quote unquote" slavery in the Constitution, but they did include key clauses protecting the institution, including a fugitive slave clause and the 3/5 clause, which allowed Southern states to count enslaved people for the purposes of representation in the federal government.
Now, we all know about the 3/5 compromise. The northern states compromised with the southern states, and they included the 3/5 compromise. If folks don't know what the 3/5 compromise is, basically what it is saying that each slave, because at this time, the U.S. government was counted by men. If you had X amount of men in your state, X amount of men in your city, you had X amount of political clout, political power in the federal government. So at this time, the northern states didn't have as many men as the southern states had. So both the North and the South did not think that the Black man or woman was actual human. They thought they believed them to be property to do with as they will whatsoever they wanted to do. However, when it came to their own clout, their own gain, they wanted to include them as a full man, but they would not give them full. I wouldn't even say rights. They wouldn't even give them full. They wouldn't look at them as a full human. So what they did was they came up with this compromise, 3/5 compromise. Every man that was counted, every slave man that was in the South was counted 3/5 of a human. So they would get 3/5 of account
Right.
towards their political power, their voting power.
Right.
Even though the slave couldn't vote or participate in any of the politics at the time, they were still counted as 3/5 of a person.
Right.
What goes to show you, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but even now, the reason why a lot of these Midwestern states, they're very low in population, right? But they hold so much, they hold more power than expected. Just like I said, even back is the way the Constitution was written is practiced today. The way they structured the 3/5 compromise is practiced today. The amount of people dictates the amount of delegates that they would get in the Congress and in the House of Representatives. They do not have. If you actually look up their the population of each of these Midwest, especially in particular Midwestern states, there's not only Midwestern states, but there are other states that dabble in what I'm about to discuss. It also goes down to county in each of these states as well. So what they bid for is these prisons. Some of them are private, some of them are public, owned by the government. Some of them owned by private people. Those prisoners that are in these jails count as political power to represent the county and then go on to represent, them on the national level.
Right.
This was done way back when. This was instituted way back when they thought up or designed the 3/5 compromise. So what is going on back then, it is happening still today.
Right.
Also, it says the fugitive slave clause, that was embedded into the Constitution as well. So when people say, well, I'm all for the U.S. and everybody's equal, when they wrote this, not only did they include or consider us as property, they wrote in their Constitution how to keep us as their property.
Right.
So this is all by design. This is all by design. Hold this for a second and let's get some of the fugitive slave acts. That should be the next one.
The next what? Article? Or?
Yeah, the next article. Go to the next article. It'll say fugitive slave acts.
Go ahead.
Now they had two of them. First one was in 1793, and the second one because it wasn't strict enough. They wanted to put some more rules and laws to govern our life. They had another one in 1850.
Right.
So go ahead and read that for me, Salaki.
The Fugitive Slave Acts were a pair of federal laws that allowed for the capture and return of runaway enslaved people within the territory of the United States.
So right there, it goes to show you that slavery is just it's evil. It's always been wrong. It says so in the Bible. Hold on. It says so. It says so thousands of years in the Bible. Even though we were captured and brought into slavery by Christians who so-called, loved the Lord, who so-called obeyed the rule of law of God, they skipped over this. They skipped over the scriptures that actually tells you that you can't take someone into slavery. If you could, Salakia, sir, can you get me Exodus 21 and 16? And this is going to show you exactly what slavery the Most High said not to do.
Right.
Told us specifically not to do this. And this was our condition. When you got it, can you read it, sir?
Absolutely.
Go on.
Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him.
He that stealeth a man who comes and grabs hold of him, puts chains on their necks, hands, and ankles,
Right.
steals them from their land. Go on.
Or if he be found in his hand.
Or if he be found in his hand, like right now, this is not our homeland. all across the Western Hemisphere. It's not our homeland. It's not where we belong. It's not where God told us we need to stay. This is not our rest. So we are found in another people's hand, and they're doing unspeakable atrocities to us day in, day out.
Right.
Not only the quote unquote little man is doing it, but it's done at a higher level that actually put laws in place to keep us in subjectivity and subject to our oppressor. Every year it comes out with a new law. If we think about rising up, they'll put us down. They'll do anything in their power to keep us in this condition.
Right.
And the reason why they do this to keep us in this condition is strictly so that they can be on top, so that they can be in control. One of the biggest fears that the oppressor has right now is it's always been a fear, is that they've done so atrociously to us. They have held us in such contempt that they feel they have to keep their foot on our neck, because if we get up, if we get one breath, they feel that we're going to take out all of our aggression out on them. When we've shown them time and time again, we just want to be left the hell alone. Just leave us alone. We can grow by ourselves. We love you. We forgive you. And that aspect has been shown. One has been bred into us. The rebellious Negroes, the rebellious slaves have been, put to death. They have been humiliated. They have been broken. And they had this happen in front of everybody so it'll be a warning. Right. Just like I brought out last week, Zumbi. His head was cut off and put on display to let everybody know you do not mess with us. The strong men who stood up to the oppressor were broken down in public, so that the other slaves can see what would happen to you if you dare stand up to the rule of law.
Right.
That bred softness. That bred better slaves for them. So year after year, decade after decade, century after century, we've been bred to love you, to forgive you, to comb your hair after you got a verdict of guilty and you need to spend 10 years in jail. We've learned to try and give you a hug after you killed our brother. That's the reality of black, unfortunately, black and Hispanics today.
Right. So
I don't know what this fear of, if you let us up, that we're going to come after you, we're going to come for your throats, because we have never really shown to do that. We have never really shown to do that. But Slaki, if you continue reading that.
He shall surely be put to death.
The Most High says he shall surely be put to death. Now that's what the scripture says. I don't know how they can, if they so Christian and they so loving, and God is love and God is everybody, and they follow God, how come they can do something like this for centuries and then teach other people to do the same thing, the same evil, the same deed? I don't get it. I don't get it. Barack, if you could, can you continue reading? Go down to among what were the fugitive slave acts? Go to the second paragraph.
Statutes regarding refugee slaves existed in America as early as 1643. In the New England Confederation, and slave laws were later enacted in several of the 13 original colonies.
Right, keep going.
Among others, New York passed a 1705 measure designed to prevent runaways from fleeing to Canada.
All right, so it says back in 1705, New York was passing slave laws. So that lets you know that even New York, the northern states where everybody was trying to get away to, had slave laws.
Right.
The reason why they had slave laws is because they had slaves. So everybody who thinks that the so-called northern states were some sort of Israel, some sort of promised land.
Right.
That's false. That's false. I don't know why we think today. Well, I do know why we think today that is like that, but it clearly states right here that they passed laws. for runaways, to prevent slaves from running away to Canada. And Canada, you getting this too. I know what you did. I'm about to bring that out too. Y'all some nasty, dirty, low down mofos.
Right.
I grew up thinking, Canada was probably the nicest place on earth. They didn't. I never learned that Canada had its own slave trade. I never knew that Canada oppressed our people the way U.S. did. But Canada is just as disgusting and nasty as the U.S. is.
Right.
And the Most High is coming to visit them. I pray I see what goes on happening up there. But if you could continue reading.
God. Among others, New York passed a 1705 measure designed to prevent runaways from fleeing to Canada, and Virginia and Maryland drafted laws offering bounties for the capture and return of escaped enslaved people. So they were having bounties for these enslaved people. The most of it, well, if not all the schools, but a lot of people know. I should say most of our people who's in the world do not know that how the police state started. The U.S. police were the originally they were slave catchers. Once slavery was abolished, there were many of them. They needed somewhere else to turn to, so we're going to get into it, but they enacted certain laws criminalizing our basically behavior. They in order for them to bring us to quote unquote their justice, they enabled these slave catchers, these former slave catchers, to police us and to bring us into subjugation once again. But is that it on that? Hold on one second. Go down to concern that these new states. Concerned that these new free states will become safe havens for runaways, Southern politicians saw that the Constitution included a quote-unquote fugitive slave clause.
All right, now bring me back to what Abraham Lincoln thought about slavery. We're gonna go back into that because his ideology on blacks in the U.S. is very integral in what I'm about to bring out. Go down to abolitionists.
Abolitionists.
It should be the first one, the number one. It should be 1, 2.
Abolitionists by contrast.
Yep.
Okay. Abolitionists by contrast knew exactly what should be done about it. Slavery should be immediately abolished, and freed enslaved people should be incorporated as equal members of society. They didn't care about working within existing political system or under the Constitution, which they saw as unjustly protecting slavery and enslavers.
So right there, this is what abolitionists thought. This is what they believed. They wanted slaves, 1, to free, and 2, to have equal rights and protection under the Constitution. But they saw through the veil of what white supremacy is, and they were trying to engage everybody and let everybody know why it's evil and why the U.S. was protecting it. And the reason why the U.S. was protecting it is because the value of the slaves, the value of the slave trade, what cash crops were in the U.S. South, and all over the Western Hemisphere. It highlighted it. What most people don't know, and I didn't know this until it was actually brought to my attention. The famous quote from the U.S. Constitution is "Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." In the original Constitution, the handwritten version of it, the very first version, And they have it on display actually here in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. You can see life, liberty, and the pursuit. It doesn't say happiness. The original word was the pursuit of property.
Right.
That was lined out and happiness was put in there. Now, what is property? We all know how they thought of the slaves. The slaves was nothing but property to a slave master. We were nothing but property. So in their constitution, although they never said slavery is legal, they put in provisions of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. That's what they wanted to say. That's what they meant to say, and that's how they carried it out. They were all for pursuing slavery. Keep going.
God. Leading abolitionist William.
Go down to the next one. Though Lincoln saw himself.
Though Lincoln saw himself as working alongside the abolitionists on behalf of a common anti-slavery cause, he did not count himself among them.
He didn't count himself among the abolitionists. He didn't want to be called an abolitionist. Why? Because he did not believe in what abolitionists believed in. He did not think that blacks should be given the equal rights to whites in his country. This is what he believed in, and we're about to get into that. Keep going.
Only with emancipation and with his support of the eventual 13th Amendment would Lincoln finally win over the most committed abolitionists.
So, we all think of Lincoln as the person who freed the slaves, but he only thing he did was emancipate the slaves. Now, it took me a while to figure out why in the world he was saying he's not an abolitionist, but he's for emancipation. Can you get me the definition of emancipation real quick, Shalakia? Because it's showing you it's telling you what abolition is, but Lincoln didn't count himself as an abolitionist. He wanted to emancipate. So what is the difference? We're about to find out.
The fact or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions, liberation, to release, to discharge.
Read that first one again one more time, please.
The fact, The fact or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions, liberation.
All right, so the abolitionists wanted the slaves to be freed. Lincoln wanted the slaves to be freed. They agreed on something, but from what the definition is writing about, is talking about, what is the difference between an abolitionist and what Lincoln was talking about, emancipation? It took, like I said, it took me a while to figure it out. So I actually looked up the word emancipate in the time that he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. And what it says is to transfer ownership from private to federal.
Right.
So that's what emancipation was.
Right.
So instead of the slave master owning the slaves, the federal government will own the slaves. And part of his plan, we're about to get into part of his plan once the emancipation came into effect. And like it says, the Emancipation Proclamation was just an executive order. It can run out. A new president can come in and tear it up. It has an expiration date on it. It would have to be signed again and again. I want to say it's only a year, 365 days, where the executive order is legal, and then they would have to redo it. But the 13th Amendment was the legislation that would put it in perpetuity. That means ongoing. Now, regular laws in states and federal government, they have expiration dates on them, just like the civil rights movement. Right. The civil rights laws has an expiration date. So if they're feeling froggy, the white man can just take the ability for us to be integrated, take the ability from us to the right to vote. And I say, let that go. let that go. We'd be better off.
Right.
We'd be much better off if we went back to that time, because we knew back then who our enemies were. We knew who our enemies were. We can operate much more smoothly than we're operating now, holding hand in hand. We're still. So if we're holding hand in hand and we're marching for equality, why is it only us that are getting shot?
Right.
Why is it only us that are getting, arrested at an alarming rate? Why is it just us if we're holding hands, standing side by side, doing the same thing? Why is the aggression coming out on us mostly?
Right.
I don't get it. I don't get it. But if you could, can you read the second one?
The second one.
Number 2, yeah. It's that same article.
I got you. Lincoln didn't believe black people should have the same rights as white people.
The person who we hail as our hero, to get us out of captivity, who we hail as our Moses, he didn't believe as for us having the same rights as whites. He wanted us to keep us in subjugation.
Right.
That was his plan, and we're about to get into what his plan was once he gained control of the slaves. Keep going.
Though Lincoln argued that the founding fathers praise, quote unquote, all men are created equal, applied to black and white people alike, this did not mean he thought they should have the same social and political rights.
That doesn't make any sense. So if you're saying I do believe that all men created equal, but them niggas over there, they can't, they can't go in the same, house as me. If they want to go in the same restaurant, they got to go in the back door. They can't look me in the eye. If they want to laugh when they're in town, they got to go put their head in the barrel. I don't want to see them happy. He believed that. This is coming from the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. I forget what number it is, but it's coming from the president. He didn't believe in us having equal rights. He didn't believe that we should have the same type of power that the white man has. He looked at us as property.
Right.
Because only a monster would look at a man or a woman or people and not see the humanity in them and just look at them as something less than them. Well, a time is coming for a change. Go to the second paragraph.
In their fourth debate at Charleston, Illinois, on September 18th of 1858, Lincoln made his position clear. He's making this clear.
So this was during the presidential debates, sort of like what happened a few days ago with Tweedledee and Tweedledum. How they were arguing their case, they were presenting their causes, but
right.
It was done. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it should be looked at as just comedy. If you want to laugh, have a drink, sit down and watch that.
Right.
And watch how much the Most High is allowing this kingdom to fall and how fast it's going to fall. So during this debate, they said he had a series of debates, and they would always accuse him of being a quote unquote nigger lover. He was for the Negroes' rights and all this, and he was like, no, I ain't. And he's making his point very clear right here, right now. Please read.
Quote unquote, I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races.
So he did not want us to be equal. The quote unquote Moses for the slaves did not want equality, and he ran on that, and he made that clear. He wanted to make that crystal clear. Stop coming to me with this BS about me wanting equal rights for blacks and whites, because that's not what I want. This is what he wanted. Keep going.
He began going on to say that he opposed blacks having the right to vote, to serve on juries, to hold office, and to intermarry with whites.
That last one was right on, spot on. That's what should have stayed there. We should vote. If you don't know, the Most High gave us a king. He gave us a leader, and he told us He ordered as a commandment, do not put anybody else over you. Do not put another nation over you. He said it. We begged the Most High for a king. He gave us a king of our own. We didn't like that king, and then he had to send his true king down for us. He is still on the throne. He is still in charge of the nation of Israel. That's under the Most High. Go down to number 3.
Lincoln thought colonization could resolve the issue of slavery.
So after he so-called freed the slaves, this was his plan. His plan was to start a colony for the freed slaves. His plan was to start a colony so that we'll read it. Keep going.
For much of his career, Lincoln believed that colonization, or the idea that a majority of the African American population should leave the United States and settle in Africa or Central America.
He didn't want us here. After he so-called freed the slaves, he wanted to ship us back. He didn't want us here. There's a specific reason why he didn't want us here. Keep going.
His two was the best way to confront the problem of slavery. His two great political heroes, Henry Clay and Thomas Jefferson.
His two great political heroes was Henry Clay and Thomas Jefferson. We all know about the Trail of Tears.
Right.
That was one of it's like, you got something?
That was Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson. We
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. Okay. We all know about the Trail of Tears. We all know about how the U.S. government as a whole ordered the killing of our Native American brothers and sisters once they got here, and once they rebelled against the white man for coming in, stealing their land, destroying their way of life. They put many of our Native American brothers and sisters in slavery here, sent them in ships back over across the ocean. They did unspeakable atrocities. Gave them disease-ridden blankets in quote-unquote peace. Some of these leaders, or these two leaders in particular, were the causes, were the progenitors of the treatment of these Native Americans, and this is his heroes. This is his hero. So we all know how the founding fathers treated the Native Americans as well as the enslaved peoples of North America, North Central South America, and the so-called Africans that were brought over here in slavery. He loved them. Go on.
Henry Clay and Thomas Jefferson had both favored colonization. Both were enslavers who took issue with aspects of slavery.
It couldn't have been that much of an issue because they were both. It said they were both slavers.
Right.
They both had slaves. They both continued to have slaves. They both passed down slaves to their children. That was the thing of the time. Keep going.
But saw no way that black and white people could live together peaceably.
So they saw no way that we can live together peacefully. After the rape and robbery and murder of us, that they saw that there was no possible way we can live together. And one of the things that they thought about was colonization, bringing us back across the ocean and putting us in a land. Right now, at that time, they had a colony. It's called Liberia. They wanted to bring all of us back into Liberia, and we would still be under their control. That's what a colony is. We would be an American colony. We would be under their rule. We would do what they say. They would set rules and laws and regulations, and we would have to follow them. No different than slavery. So I don't see, what the big deal was. However, you can go and look at, the reservations that they put our other brothers, our Native American brothers and sisters on to show that we couldn't live peaceably with them. We had to live separately. We had to live separately. Why? It wasn't because we were at their throats. They were always at our throats. They never saw us as people. Damn, we are people. Leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. There's a saying in the hood, don't start no stuff, won't be no stuff. We don't never really start anything. If we start something, it's a beef between a brother, beef between two sisters. It was always between us. It was never between, us and them. Leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. So this is what he said. He wanted to send us back across in a colony. Go down to number 4.
4. Emancipation was a military policy. The Civil War was fundamentally a conflict over slavery. However, the way Lincoln saw it, emancipation when it came would have to be gradual. The most important thing was to prevent the Southern Rebellion from severing the Union permanently in two.
All right, okay. So basically, what he's saying, without the military occupying these spaces, they would revert back to slavery. The southern states or the emancipated states, the seceded states would disobey the rule of law, the order of the president, and they would still hold slaves as slaves. Go down to the 5th one.
The Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free all enslaved people.
And this is what I was talking about. He helped the states. Well, continue reading.
Since Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation as a military measure, it didn't apply to border slave states like Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri, all of which were loyal to the Union. Missouri actually had 2 competing governments, one loyal to and recognized by the Union, and one loyal to the Confederacy.
A house divided cannot stand. So basically, what he's saying, these states were bordering the states between the seceded states and the Union. These states, although they sided with the Union, they still had slaves. And a compromise that Lincoln had was they can keep their slaves. So even though he decreed that all slaves were to be free, and whoever had slaves after January 1st, 1863 were considered in open rebellion, and they were a part of the Confederacy, but not these states. These states he gave a pass to. So even though a lot of them had to fight in the war to free themselves, they were still slaves in the land that they were fighting to be freed. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Keep going. You know what? Drop this and get me. It's the role cotton played in the 1800s, because this article is going to show us exactly how the white man saw us. We all know that one of the largest things that slaves worked on or picked was cotton. We also picked tobacco. Tobacco was a big commodity back in those days. You could not get tobacco as free as you could today. You cannot get cotton as free as you could today. Back then, cotton and tobacco were 2 of the highest commodities in all the land. 2 of the highest commodities. And in the Central and South America, sugarcane was also a high commodity. If you look at today, even today, right now, sugar is in damn near everything we eat. We take sugar. They even, like I said, Brazil, they got from underneath the dependency on oil from ethanol, which they got from sugar. So sugar sugar is in damn near everything. One of the richest colonies, slave states back then was Haiti. Why? Because they produced so much sugar cane they produced, made France rich beyond wealth. Another thing, tobacco. Even you look at the tobacco industry right now. If a tobacco industry, even though it kills, hundreds of thousands of people every year just in the United States from emphysema, cancer, and all these other health related issues, people still smoke, people still dip, people still chew tobacco. They still do this. Back then, it was just as important as it is now. Both the sugar and the cotton, sugar and the tobacco industry are multi-billion, probably multi-trillion-dollar industries right now, and they were built off the backs of slaves. Cotton, you can't pick up a piece of cloth right now without cotton being in it. Right. Cotton is in damn near everything we wear. Right. I dare you to look at something that's not cotton and if you do, it's probably 100% silk or synthetic. Even the synthetic stuff has cotton in it. So the importance of sugar, tobacco, and cotton, the things that made this nation and this hemisphere rich beyond wealth, they wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for the slaves. Now let's see what cotton is all about.
You ready, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's beautiful bowls and bales of rich value. The master control.
Now go down to the most commonly used phrase.
The most commonly used phrase describing the growth of the American economy in the 1830s and 1840s was "cotton is king."
Just like cash is king. Right now, people, especially in the States, we know the term cash is king. Why? Because if you have cash, you can get just about anything you want. If you're looking to buy a house or some property and it's X amount, if it's $100,000, but if you go to the person and be like, hey, I got $70,000 right now cash, sell this property to me right now. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be like, all right, okay, cool. Why? Because cash is king. Back then, they say cotton is king. Just as much power as we had back now for cash, cotton back then was king. Keep going.
We think of this slogan today as describing the plantation economy of the slavery states in the Deep South, which led to the creation of the Second Middle Passage. But it is important to understand that this was not simply a Southern phenomenon. Cotton was one of the world's first luxury commodities after sugar and tobacco. After sugar and tobacco.
So, like I said, sugar was number 1, tobacco was number 2, and cotton was number 3. In the U.S., the U.S. produced predominantly tobacco and cotton. So they had 2 of the 3 top cash cows in the world that the world was clamoring for, and they can produce it on a damn near unlimited basis. Go down to, let's start with the value of slave population.
Let's start with the value of slave population. Stephen DeLee shows that in 1860, the value of the slaves was roughly 3 times greater than the total amount invested in banks.
So all the money that was in the banks, all the slaves was worth 3 times all that money. Keep going.
And it was equal to about 7 times the total value of all currency in circulation in the country.
All 7 times the amount of money that was actually in circulation. So 3 times all the money that was invested in banks, 7 times the money that was in open circulation in the country. Keep going.
3 times the value of the entire livestock population.
3 times the value of the entire livestock population. Keep going.
12 times the value of the entire U.S. cotton crop and 12 times down the value of the entire U.S. cotton crop.
So it was, like I said, the top 3 commodities in the world was sugar. We didn't produce that much. When I say we, I said the U.S. The U.S. didn't produce that much. 2, tobacco. The U.S. produced a ton of tobacco. And 3, cotton. It says the slaves were 12 times the value of what the U.S. cotton was. So the U.S. saw a way to make money in the cotton crop. but the value of the slave was worth 12 times the amount of the entire cotton industry. So when people say it costs more, this right here is proving people to be a liar. People are saying it costs more to have a slave and keep the upkeep of a slave, because they didn't have they had to feed them, they had to have room and board and whatnot. This is saying the slave's cost or the slave value was 12 times that of the cash crop that they were picking. Keep going.
And 48 times the total expenditure of the federal government that year. So
whatever the government spent in that year, the slaves were 48 times that amount. Slock, if you could, sir, can you give me Deuteronomy 76? Mm-hmm. So they've taught us, they drilled into us year after year after year, generation after generation after generation, that we weren't squat, we weren't nothing. But right here is telling us that we are worth 3, 4, 7, 48 times the amount of all this other stuff. Everything that made the U.S. rich, we were multiple times more valuable than what those things made them rich. It's like, sir, if you got it, can you read it for me, please?
Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God.
The scripture says, thou art an holy people. It's talking about the children of Israel, the slaves that this article was talking about. We are a holy people unto God. Keep going, sir.
The Lord thy God have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself.
It is nothing that we did. Most High chose us to be special to himself. Keep going.
Above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
Above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Name me a people that was worth this amount of wealth. There is no other people that is worth this amount of wealth, and we didn't even know we were worth this amount of wealth. We thought we were just some dumb niggas and spicks that can't get right. We thought we were just drug dealers and strippers that ruined our neighborhoods and ruined the country. We put black eye on the good name of this filthy country. When in actuality, the Most High says we are a special people. We are above every people that are upon the face of the earth. Right. I didn't say that. The Most High said it. If you have a problem, you need to take that up with the Most High.
Right.
Moreover, we're actually reading that these scriptures are bringing to light. This article is proving the Most High is right and that man is a liar, because man is teaching that's taught us so long,
right,
that our nappy hair is garbage. We need to dye it and straighten it in order to fit it. We need to shave our face in order to fit in, to look professional. Right. When the Most High said kinky is the way to be, having facial hair, that's the proof of a man. Not to shave shave what the Most High gave you. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And it goes on to show you a ton more about us. When I say us, the former slaves in America, and what we actually represent in America, not what the slave master gave us. Because what the slave master gave us is a bunch of crap. Slovakia. If you could, I'm not sure if you have it, sir. Did I give you the 13th Amendment, sir? Let me get that to you real quick, sir. But what I'm about to go into is the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Hold on one second. And the 13th Amendment is the actual document that so-called set the slaves free. Not the Emancipation Proclamation.
The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution officially ended the institution of slavery is ratified neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crimes.
Slocky, except for what?
Except as a punishment for a crime.
So in the Constitution, the amendment to abolish so-called abolish slavery makes it legal in the Constitution. Just like I said earlier, laws can be revoked. Laws can run out of time and not re-up. But in this, is saying the difference between a law and amendment is an amendment in the Constitution is in perpetuity. It would have to take 3/4 of the states to say we want this in order for this to happen. So if they want to abolish the 13th Amendment, it would take 3/4 of the states currently to abolish slavery.
Right.
So it is actually in the U.S. the DNA of the USA for slavery to be legal.
Right.
And how is it legal? It says, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted.
Right.
So what happened after this amendment has taken place, has been ratified? What happened was Reconstruction. This amendment happened in 1865. Reconstruction happened roughly between 1865 and 1877. And during that time, just like when the Emancipation Proclamation was in effect, the only way for slavery for the states not to enforce slavery was if the military occupied that place.
Right.
And just like in Reconstruction, the military occupied these places, these lands, to ensure that Reconstruction can go off without a hitch. So for 12 years, Reconstruction was in full effect. And during that time, with the government's military in each of these states and cities, Black people thrived. If you give us just a little bit of room to grow, we're going to grow. We thrive so much so that we become mayors, we become senators, we become congressmen, we become lawmakers. We've created and enacted so many laws. And this was during the 12 years, this Reconstruction time frame was 12 years. We didn't have any we didn't have a piece of paper saying we graduated from Tuscaloosa, A&M, we didn't have any of that. Even though we were educated in a way to hold this kingdom up, where we had to write blueprints and read blueprints, where we had to fix things and build things, we weren't authorized. We didn't get that we didn't get that nod on the back to say, hey, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. But during that time frame, we were senators, we were mayors, we were congressmen, we were leaders of our own communities, and including some of their communities.
Right.
Now, during slavery, there were these things called slave codes. These slave codes basically was just, rules and laws stating, telling us how we can live and how we can't live. After slavery was so-called abolished, after the 13th Amendment was ratified, the slave codes went to the Black codes. The Black codes were very similar to the slave codes, whereas there was a lot of stuff that was in slavery that we couldn't do. It just turned into Black codes.
Right.
So the slave codes were born. The Black codes were born of the slave codes. That was basically the basic gist of it. Can you get that? Black codes?
In the article?
Yeah, the article, the Black codes. There's a specific piece in there. Hold on 1 second. Go to the second paragraph. The Black codes had their roots.
The Black codes had their roots.
Yeah, should be the second paragraph.
The Black codes had their roots in the slave codes that had formerly been in effect. The black codes had their roots in the slave codes that had formerly been in effect. The premise behind chattel slavery in America was that slaves were property, and as such, they had few or no legal rights. The slave codes and their many loosely defined forms were seen as effective tools against slave unrest, particularly as a hedge against uprisings and runaways.
All right, go down to the next one. The black codes enacted.
The black codes enacted immediately after the American Civil War, though varying from state to state, were all intended to secure a steady supply of cheap labor, and all continue to assume the inferiority of the freed slaves.
Inferiority of free slaves. So basically, So basically, what they're saying is the black codes came from the slave codes during right after the Civil War, during Reconstruction. The black codes were enacted to criminalize black life, essentially. They anything that we were to do was just sort of like once slavery was quote unquote over, we didn't have any lands, we didn't have any jobs, we couldn't go anywhere. We were living on the land of the slave owner. The slave owner, quote unquote, kicked us off the land. If we stayed there for a certain period of time, the police, former slave catchers at the time, would round us up, put us in jail, and then lease us out to where we came from.
Right.
A lot of times we went right back on the plantation. So we would have fines for $100, $200, $300, whatever it was, and we would have to pay that back. Now it would take months or years to pay that fine off. Once we so-called paid that fine off, we were let free, let go, and we would get rearrested for the same thing. So we'd have to do it. It would just be a circle. And if we stayed in a particular place for more than a certain time, I want to say it was like 24 hours or 48 hours, we were considered vagrants. And it's funny how they consider us vagrants and vagabonds when the scripture calls them vagabonds. They have no home, they have no land. Right. They go from place to place, conquering, killing in order to stay there. They are a disease, but they're calling us that, and they criminalize the condition that they put us in, so that we couldn't maintain our livelihood, our dignity. They burned all that to the ground. From the black codes, once the black codes were enacted, everybody's seen how the way the South was. They did away with the black codes. The black codes, went away, and in came Jim Crow laws. We all know what Jim Crow laws are. It's came from the black codes. The black codes came from the slave codes. Jim Crow laws was basically trying to put us. It did put us back into a subservient position. And if we disobeyed their Jim Crow laws, we'd be found at the end of a noose hanging on a tree. Right. And we'd be on a postcard, or we go to jail, get fined, and then be working on the chain gang. Back in the South, the chain gang was very, very popular for us. Even though the laws that we were breaking had nothing to do with us. We were put into those conditions, just like we're put into these conditions right now. Salaki, if you could give me that last article, is all the different jobs prison inmates do. So as of right now, the 13th Amendment still stands. Right now, the prison population is last time I checked, 2.3 million Black and Hispanic folks in jail. Most of those happen during the three strikes you're out, minimum mandatories, the bills that our beloved Democrats have passed, Biden, Clinton's, and all those other folks that was in power back then. They criminalized out. They put us into a condition in order for us to react a certain way, and then they criminalize one that condition that we're in, and two, the way that we reacted to that to those conditions. So they criminalized it, building up their nation at the same time. So back then, it showed that we were put into that we were arrested for some bogus crimes and put into back into slavery because they criminalized the way we live. That's almost like if we were in power and we criminalized, not seasoning your chicken right, or if we criminalized, having your dog lay in the bed with you. That was the same thing as what they did with us back then. We like to get together. We like to get together in brotherhood and whatnot. They criminalized that. We couldn't be together in the same place at the same time without having a white person there involved. They could be sitting back, even in the church back then. If we went to church to so-called praise God and whatnot, there would have to be a white man there in order to see what we were doing. If that didn't happen, we were going to jail and we were going back into slavery.
Right.
Sir.
And if I may, even in Maryland, there's a law still in the books where if 5 Native American brothers are together, it's considered a war council.
Look at that. A war council.
What?
Mm-hmm.
On the books right now. This is what. Speaking of on the books right now, did you know that in 2013, the last state ratified the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery? They thought it was okay to not ratify the 13th Amendment in 2013. Mississippi. Mississippi. We all know how Mississippi is like.
Right.
So right here in this article, do you have, Brock, all the different jobs in prison?
Come, I have it.
All right, read that from the top for me, Bob.
Come. All the different jobs prison inmates do. There are over 2 million inmates occupying prisons across our country, and a majority of them are expected to partake in some form of employment during their incarceration. Prison inmate jobs serve as a way to pass the time, but they are also a requirement. Also a requirement.
That means you must do this when you go to jail.
Right.
Everybody, there are many Black and Hispanics people, whether you're in the truth or in your world, know somebody or knew somebody who was either in jail or went to jail. That 7 degrees of separation. Everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
We all know somebody that has went to jail, spent some time in prison.
Right.
Keep going.
Employment is mandated for all federal inmates.
Employment is mandated for all federal inmates. So that means when you hear people say, "I don't know any slaves," knowing slavery has ended, hundreds of years ago or 100-something years ago, that's not true, because there's people in slavery right now,
right,
according to the U.S. Constitution. If you know somebody who has been locked up, they were slaves according to the Constitution. They were mandated. It says mandated to work. This was a requirement. If they had to work against their will and they had no other choice, they were slaves according to the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
So that whole moniker that's saying we don't know anybody who was slaves is a bunch of BS. We all know a slave who has been an actual slave in this kingdom.
Right.
Moreover, just for time's sake, if you want to read this article, it shows you, all the despicable way that they treat us and all that. How little we earn. It even says that a woman in Tennessee, if a woman in Tennessee, she would have to save up for 2 weeks just to get her monthly health care stuff. Have to save up for 2 weeks, working all the time to save up 2 weeks just to get what she needs every month. That's the conditions that we're in. This is the beast that we're under.
Right.
Moreover, after the white man has seen other dollar signs from us, they invented, or the government made legal private prisons.
Right.
Private prisons is an institution that has oversight from the federal government, but is contracted out to private companies, private individuals. And the way that they make their money, let's just say it will cost $100 a day to house a prisoner. They will put in a bid for the contract to be $150. So if they can max out, the prison of 1,000, they would bank $50. They would undercut everything that they can get, feed you moldy food and all this other stuff. They would undercut you all this stuff, and they would profit $50 a day per prisoner. Now, if it was maxed out 1,000, which it's over capacity, because once they get you in, they keep you in there with minor infractions. They give you 3-4 months for talking back to a prison guard and whatnot.
Right.
They give all this BS stuff to try and keep you in there. So if they have 1,000 prisoners and they're making $50 a day, that's $50,000 a month that they're making. No, my bad. That's $50,000 a day that they're making. They are making $50,000 a day, and then they will go on to build another facility because this one is so overpopulated. Now they're trying to push the government to arrest more and more Black and Hispanics, and this is all for profit. Not only that, once they are actually in there, there's a whole long list of companies that are exploiting this so-called loophole. You got. I'm just gonna read just a few of this list. You got American Express, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan and Company, Allstate, Geico, ExxonMobil, BP America, Johnson & Johnson, Sara Lee, Procter & Gamble, Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, United Airlines, Wendy's, McDonald's, Fruit of the Loom. If you got partaken in any of this, you're helping the U.S. commit more slavery atrocities. This is all these people benefit from slave labor from these private prisons and public prisons. It's not just the private prisons; it's the public prisons as well. These private prisons are publicly traded stocks, so people can buy stock in these companies right now. Not only that, these companies are in like other mutual funds. So when people say, well, I don't own stock in that particular company, but if you own a certain mutual fund, that stock is in. A mutual fund is basically a bunch of different stocks that are going to this one investment tool, and basically you earn money off of that. That's basically what it is. So if you own either that company, stocks in that company, or if you own stocks and the mutual fund of that or the index that company is a part of, guess what? You are a slave master.
Right.
So when people say, I don't know any slaves, I don't know any slave masters, you a goddamn liar. There are plenty of slave masters right now who are wanting to get their profits up from the slaves that are incarcerated right now. And you know what? Most likely it's those people who are in BLM, who was going down the streets, chanting Black Lives Matter and I can't breathe.
Right. Most
of those people are white people who most likely own stock in some of these companies. And probably some of them may know it, some of them may not know it. But if they don't know it, they don't really do research. And if they do know it, they don't care. They just look at the bottom line. So that whole moniker, I don't know any slaves, I don't know any slave masters, that's BS, because we all know somebody who's been locked up before.
Right.
We all know that. And that I'm gonna stop with that. If someone get me Psalms 119, 71, and 72, Baba Shaw.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you exactly what the Lord thinks of us, what the Most High thinks of us.
119 or what?
119, 71, and 72.
The book of Psalms, chapter 119, verse 71. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes.
Say it again.
That I might learn thy statutes.
It is good for me that what?
It is good for me that I have been afflicted.
It says, it is good for me that I've been afflicted. Getting checked. Getting checked is a hard thing, and it's a beautiful thing. If you coming out getting checked, for one, you should know that the person checking you is correcting you for the things that you ain't doing right. If the Most High checks you, that's something harsh. But if you're still alive, if you're still walking around, you should know that He's giving you an opportunity to fix yourself. Keep going.
That I might learn thy statutes.
That you might learn the way of life. That he taught you, but you disobeyed. We disobeyed all these laws, and He had to check us in one way or another. Some of us heard it, and we corrected ourselves. Keep going.
Verse 72. The law of thy mouth is better unto me than thousands of gold and silver.
So He's saying all this gold and silver, that's great, but that's not going to keep me out of jail. You know what I'm saying? Shine had a lot of money. Shine, he served his prison sentence because he was with that sodomite, Puffy. Served his prison sentence, lost his money, and now he got deported back to Belize. Right. A lot of people who have money, and don't follow the laws, most likely wind up losing their money. And if they don't lose their money, they're going to spend all their money trying to keep that money.
Right.
If you don't understand what I'm saying is, if these rich folks have all this money, they ain't following the law, something's going to happen where they're going to spend all their money on these lawyers and court fees to try and keep them out of trouble. And then at the end of it, they broke.
Right.
So like if someone can get me Psalms 19 and 9, Baba Shah.
Psalms 19 or 119?
19 and 9, sir.
Psalms chapter 19, verse 9.
The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever.
The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. Keep going.
The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether.
So how he's judging us is true and righteous. We have no right to, rebel. One, we shouldn't even rebel against the Most High. That's period. Two, once He corrects us and we still alive, you should count your stars. You should thank God that He kept you here to get your stuff together. Keep going.
Verse 10. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. So
He's saying the judgments are righteous and the statutes are right. All of that is better than gold. All the gold in the world is better than all the honey, all the sweetness of the honey. I don't know if you had real honey, but I was in certain countries, and when I had that honey, I was like, what in the hell are we eating back in the States? Because that is the stuff that we have is manufactured BS.
Right.
It's nasty.
Right.
But what this real honey is, they're saying that the righteous judgment of the Most High is sweeter than that. Keep going. Verse 11.
Moreover, by them is thy servant warned. So
He's saying, by them, by the righteous judgment, whether it happens to us or it happens to our brother that we see, it's saying that we are being warned. Keep going.
In keeping of them, there is great reward.
So in keeping of them is great reward. For one is actually living. That's probably the greatest reward. An actual chance to serve the Most High. And with that, I will pass the class on to priest and officer Kazaka.
All right. Security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K. out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under commanding General YAHANNA. New rules for brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves with the world. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or a sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. You can find this in Numbers 18 and 21 and Malachi 3, 8 to 10. Means 10th in Hebrew and is pronounced ma'ashara. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives, you give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like to give. The upcoming holy convocation is the Feast of Tabernacles. That's the 15th day of the 7th month for 8 days. Thursday, October 1st and Friday, October 9th. Friday, October 9th will be the closing. 2020. Start before sundown. You can find this in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 34 to 44. Remind Akim and Agwakin to check on social media such as ISUPK.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and so on for I.S.U.P.K. events and materials. If a brother wants to be a trooper in the school, he's to start wearing all black, which includes black boots, black shirts, black pants, black headband, and scarf. And with that, I say Amaju, which means to stand. Men of Israel, we're going to give one courtesy salute to the teacher. Men of Israel, Amaju Shabbat, Amaju, Barak, Yazmata, dismiss. Yeah, absolutely.
Came up with all the